Okay, this is week 5, and today we're going to talk about motivation. Motivation is one of the most important topics in any discussion of management. Management is often charged with creating an environment that will be motivating and rewarding for employees, and that's a very, very difficult thing to do. So it's important to understand motivation and to be able to think through what that might mean to the design of work and plans to reward employees for their work. Your chapter does an excellent job of covering this material. Unlike some of the other chapters, I'm not supplementing at all. They are covering all of the topics that I think are the important ones to cover. But I will summarize and move through that content that's in the chapter. So by the end of this week, you should be able to explain what motivation is and why managers need to be concerned with it. Also, I would expect you to be able to explain, compare, and contrast the major theories of motivation, and there's some exercises associated with that in the weekly assignments. And then also to apply motivation theories in redesigning a work situation. I think all of that can be important. So let's talk first about the nature of motivation. It's the psychological force that determines the direction and the effort and the persistence with which someone approaches their work. So what does direction mean? Well, that's the possible behaviors the individual could engage in. Basically, it's what they choose to do, how they focus their efforts. Then it also includes effort, meaning how hard they work. So it's what they do, how hard they work at doing it, and then also persistence, whether they keep trying even in the face of some difficulty and give up, or whether they just keep trying. And so those are the three sort of dimensions of the definition of motivation: direction, effort, and persistence. When we think of motivation, we can think of intrinsically motivated behavior, meaning someone is motivated to do work or to behave in a certain way for its own sake. So, for example, if you have a hobby that you really love, you're motivated to work on that hobby and to get better at that hobby because you just enjoy it. It's fun. It's completely intrinsic motivation, meaning you are getting personal satisfaction from doing that work. Extrinsically motivated behavior is behavior that is performed to acquire material or social rewards or to avoid punishment. So you may be motivated to get your taxes in line and pay your taxes each year, but you, of course, are doing that primarily to avoid punishment, although it could be also because you believe you're contributing to society with those tax dollars. But and when it comes to going to work, you probably, I'm not sure any of you would show up at your job and work if they weren't paying you to do that. But the level of motivation that you bring to doing the work, doing it well, going above and beyond those organization citizenship behaviors we talked about, to achieve above and beyond the minimum standard because of a personality characteristic tied to, say, achievement orientation or conscientiousness. Those things would suggest that you are motivated to perform for other reasons other than just the external rewards. And then there is what's called pro-socially motivated behavior, and that is behavior that you do because you believe it will benefit or help others. So it's like, what is the reason you're doing the work? What is that, quote, motivation that you have for doing the work? Is it because you enjoy it and you just want to do it? Is it because you have an expectation of something that will come to you because of it? Or is it because you believe others will benefit from it? Here's what's described in your book as the motivation equation. And it's the idea that you have input from organization members. You have their time, their effort, their education, their experience, their skills, their knowledge, and their behavior on the job. And those things contribute to performance of the organization. So the organization, through the efforts of all of those organizational members, can be more efficient, more effective, and it can attain the goals of the organization. So an organization can only perform to the degree that the people there work to bring about those outcomes. Now, the outcomes received by the organization members in order to accomplish this outcome for the organization, what do the employees get back? Well, they get pay. They get some level of job security, hopefully. They get benefits, which can include vacation time and health benefits and other things. They certainly can have job satisfaction that is derived from the work they do. They can have some autonomy, meaning some discretion in how they go about doing their work. There could be some level of responsibility given to them to plan their own work and do it as needed. They can derive a feeling of accomplishment from what they have done. They can have just the sheer pleasure of doing interesting work or of being with people that they like in the workplace. And it can be that they're improving the lives or well-being of others. If the company is producing a product or a service that is of value to people and is needed and improves the quality of life of the customers, that in and of itself can be a benefit that is derived by the members of the organization. Expectancy theory is one theory tied to motivation that says that motivation will be high when workers believe that a high level of effort leads to high performance and that high performance leads to the attainment of desired outcomes. In essence, expectancy theory says, I'm highly motivated if I believe I can go to work, and if I work really hard, then good things will happen and there will be tangible benefits that will be derived from that. The organization will be successful, and I, in turn, will derive some success from that. It's called expectancy theory. Sort of, can you expect these outcomes? So expectancy means a perception about the extent to which effort will result in a certain level of performance. Okay? Then another definition associated with this theory is instrumentality. That is a perception about the extent to which performance results in the attainment of the outcomes. And then valence is the term used to describe how desirable each of the available outcomes from a job or organization is to a person. Okay, so those are the terms that are used. But let's think about what they mean in common sense. I mean, that's the researcher's terminology. So expectancy is the perception that I have about, whether I can do this work and I will have a performance result from it, that I can make it happen. And then instrumentality is about whether performance results in the attainment of the outcomes that are due to me from this. For example, maybe that I get a pay raise. And then valence is how important that is to me. Do I value that pay raise? Okay? So looking at it in a form of a diagram here, effort, again, which is an important part of this. You have to put in effort in order to get performance. And then from performance, you get outcomes that may be of value. So expectancy is about converting effort into performance. Instrumentality is about the link between performance and outcomes, that hard work results in outcomes. And then valence is how valuable are those outcomes, okay? So expectancy, again, a perception about the extent to which effort leads to a certain level of performance. Instrumentality is the person's perception about the extent to which that performance at a certain level will result in attainment of outcomes. And then valence is how valuable are those outcomes. So you might expect that when expectancy is high, instrumentality is high, and valence is high, you're going to have a highly motivated individual. In other words, they feel in control to do the work. They believe that that work results in a good outcome. That outcome results in rewards that are of value to them. Okay? Another set of theories about motivation are tied to need, and we've already talked about some of this. The need theories of motivation focus on what people are trying to satisfy through their work and what outcomes then will satisfy those needs. What is it they're looking for from their job? And the basic premise here is that people are motivated to obtain outcomes at work to satisfy their needs. They work because they need to derive something from it. Okay, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a very, very important theory that, again, is discussed all the time. You'll hear people in the social sciences talk about it as if everyone should have some familiarity with this. So if you are not familiar with it, make sure you read this very, very carefully in your book and spend a good bit of time reviewing these concepts. I hear Maslow's hierarchy come up in conversation all the time. They come up in the TED Talks all the time. So what Maslow argued was that in essence, everyone has basic needs that must be satisfied in order to feel safe and secure. And those needs must be satisfied first. And that on top of that, you can give them additional things, or they can create additional things for themselves that allow them to meet additional needs. But if those lower level needs are not satisfied, the availability of higher order needs will not. You can't satisfy those and get any kind of good outcome. So, as it says, the lowest level of unsatisfied need motivates behavior. Once this level of need is satisfied, a person tries to satisfy the needs at the next level. So, what is the lowest level of need? It's called physiological needs, and it is the basic need for food, water, shelter that must be met in order for a person to survive. And how does a manager address that? Well, by providing a level of pay that enables a person to buy food, clothing, and have adequate housing. And until that need is met, there's really not much else that is important in this equation here. Once that need is met, what tends to be next? What do people tend to focus on? It's safety needs. And a safety need is a need for security, for stability, for a safe environment. So how does a manager address that? By providing job security, adequate medical benefits, and safe working conditions. The third level up is belongingness, kind of a social need. And that is the need for social interaction, for friendship, affection, and love. Well, a company may not be the source, the organization may not be the source for fulfilling that need. Let's be honest about that. But by promoting good interpersonal relationships within an organization and organizing some social functions so people feel like they belong to a group, that can help that. I would argue that most people feel their social interaction through their family and friends that they have that may or may not be part of the organization. The organization can certainly undermine their feeling of belongingness by being a hostile place to work. But it's in all likelihood something that people will derive outside their organization as well as inside their organization. And the next level of need is esteem needs. And that is the need to feel good about yourself and your capabilities, to be respected by other people, and to receive recognition and appreciation. And certainly organizations are able to support people with their esteem needs by granting them pay raises, granting them promotions, recognizing their accomplishments when they do a good job. And also to provide, it's not down here, but to provide them with training opportunities, to provide them with enrichment opportunities that make them feel more capable and competent, and give them opportunities to show what they can do to other people so that they're respected by other people. And the highest order need, what your book calls the highest level need, but I've learned was the highest order need, is the self-actualization need, and that's the need to realize one's full potential as a human being. That is, sort of going above and beyond in some ways, sort of the requirements of a job. I mean, it is wanting to reach your full potential, to be as well educated, as well read, as self-actualized is what it's called, as you possibly can be. And that, in terms of an organization's role in that part of this needs hierarchy, is by giving people the opportunity to use their skills and abilities to the fullest extent possible, or just giving them enrichment opportunities beyond the scope of what they do. I wouldn't want to suggest that these psychological needs have to all be served by their place of employment, right? These are psychological needs that go well beyond what a company can do. So someone's basic need for food, water, and shelter is much, much more comprehensive than what a company can do for it. But it just shows how the things that companies do can be thought of as something that serves a particular need. Now, what people will go on to argue from this is that pay, your basic salary, is really not something that plays into esteem and self-actualization, for example. I mean, it might to some degree play into esteem because it might be a form of recognition, but for the most part it's not. And so it's important to distinguish between what are some of the lower order, most basic and somewhat most compelling needs versus those that are higher order needs that people also want to have in their lives to be happy. Read this part of your chapter very thoroughly. It's a really interesting theory, and there's a lot to it. That concludes our quick overview of the first part of the motivation chapter, and we will come back with part 2 to discuss the other motivation theories. Okay, thank you.